I hired him to plan my wedding to another man. Fletcher was calm, professional, brilliant at his job. But somewhere between the cake tastings and venue tour, I realized something terrifying. Every time I pictured my future, the person standing beside me wasn't my fiancé anymore. It was him. Please like and subscribe. Sharing your own story in the comments helps others feel less alone. My name is Isaac Brennan, and I never expected to be the kind of person who questions everything 3 months before his wedding. Jason and I had been together for 4 years. We met through mutual friends at a rooftop barbecue in Milwaukee, where we both lived in the 3rd Ward neighborhood. He was a civil litigation attorney. I worked as a clinical research coordinator at a university hospital. We were stable, compatible, committed. When he proposed on a weekend trip to Door County, I said yes without hesitation. It felt like the natural next step. We talked about marriage plenty of times. Our families got along. Our friends approved. Planning the wedding, though, turned out to be more complex than either of us anticipated. Jason worked 70-hour weeks. I barely had time to return vendor emails. After 2 months of missed appointments and mounting stress, Jason suggested we hire a professional. That's how Fletcher Raines entered our lives. We met him on a rainy Tuesday evening at a cafe on North Water Street. I arrived first, shaking droplets off my jacket. Jason texted that he'd be 20 minutes late. Court ran over. Fletcher walked in exactly on time. Tall, maybe 6'1", with dark auburn hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a charcoal sweater and carried a leather portfolio that looked broken in, well used. When he smiled, it reached his eyes. "Isaac," he asked, extending his hand. His handshake was warm and firm. "That's me." "Fletcher Raines. Good to meet you." He ordered black coffee and sat across from me. "Jason running behind. Work emergency. He'll be here soon." "No problem." Fletcher opened his portfolio, pulling out a tablet and a simple notebook. "Gives us a chance to talk. Tell me about you too." "How'd you meet?" I relaxed into the story. Fletcher listened with complete attention, occasionally jotting notes. Not the frantic, performative kind of listening some vendors did. Genuine curiosity. Jason arrived flustered, apologizing. Fletcher reset the conversation gracefully, asking the same questions, making Jason feel included. By the end of the hour, we'd hired him. Over the following weeks, Fletcher became a constant presence. He coordinated everything. The venue at the Grain Exchange building downtown, catering tastings, florists, photographers. He had impeccable taste but never imposed it. He'd present 3 options, explain pros and cons, then step back. "This is your day," he'd say. "I'm just here to make it happen." Jason appreciated Fletcher's efficiency. I appreciated something harder to name. Fletcher had this way of asking questions that made you think deeper. Not just what flowers do you want, but what feeling do you want people to have when they walk in? One Saturday, Jason had a deposition he couldn't reschedule. Fletcher and I met alone to finalize the menu. We sat in a small bistro in Bay View, sampling hors d'oeuvres the caterer sent over. "This one's too rich," I said, setting down a crostini. Fletcher nodded. "Agreed, you want something people can eat standing up without feeling weighed down." "Exactly." He made a note, then looked up. "Can I ask you something personal?" I hesitated. "Sure, what made you say yes when Jason proposed?" It wasn't an inappropriate question, but it caught me off guard. "I love him, we're good together." "That's not what I asked." I met his eyes. There was no judgment there, just curiosity. "I don't know, it felt right, like it was time." Fletcher nodded slowly. "That makes sense." We moved on to dessert options, but the question stayed with me. As April turned into May, I started noticing small things. How Fletcher remembered I didn't like overly sweet wine. How he'd texted me a picture of a vintage typewriter he saw at an estate sale because I'd mentioned collecting them. How our meetings felt less like work and more like conversations I didn't want to end. I told myself it was just rapport. Fletcher was good at his job. Building relationships with clients was part of that. Then came the venue walkthrough. Jason couldn't make it. Again. Fletcher and I met at the Grain Exchange on a Wednesday afternoon. The space was stunning. Soaring ceilings, original woodwork, massive windows letting in golden light. "This is where you'll stand," Fletcher said, guiding me to the ceremony spot. "Guests here." And here. I looked at the aisle, tried to picture Jason waiting for me. For some reason, the image wouldn't come into focus. "You okay?" Fletcher asked. "Yeah, just." Taking it in, we walked through the reception layout. Fletcher explained the flow, cocktail hour, dinner, dancing. He was animated, gesturing as he described how the evening would unfold. I found myself watching him instead of visualizing the event. At one point, he turned and caught me staring. "What?" he asked, smiling. "Nothing. You're just really good at this." "I love what I do," he paused. "Helping people celebrate something real, it matters. Do you ever want it? Marriage, I mean." Fletcher's expression shifted. "Something quieter, maybe if I found the right person." "What would that look like, the right person?" He considered this. "Someone curious, kind. Someone who asks real questions and listens to the answers. Someone who makes me want to be more honest than I usually am." The air between us felt different, charged. "Fletcher," I started, not knowing how to finish. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, breaking the moment. "That's the florist. I should take this." I nodded, grateful and disappointed in equal measure. That night, lying beside Jason, I couldn't sleep. He was already out, exhausted from another long day. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. Something was shifting inside me, something I didn't know how to name yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I tried to create distance. I let Jason handle more of the wedding communication. I kept my texts to Fletcher brief and professional. It didn't help. Because Fletcher was still there, still thoughtful, still asking questions that made me examine my own life. And Jason, through no fault of his own, was absent. Not just physically. Even when we were together, he was distracted, half present. One evening, Jason and I argued, nothing major. He'd forgotten we had a cake tasting. I'd confirmed it twice. "I can't keep track of everything, Isaac," he said, frustrated. "That's why we hired Fletcher." "Fletcher isn't marrying me, you are." Jason rubbed his face. "I know, I'm sorry. Work is just insane right now. It's always insane." He looked at me, something wounded in his expression. "What do you want me to say?" I didn't answer. Because the truth, the thing I was starting to realize, was too big to speak out loud yet. The cake tasting happened on a Saturday. Jason showed up, but he was on his phone half the time. Fletcher noticed. He kept trying to engage Jason, pull him into the conversation. It was kind. It also made the contrast more obvious. Afterward, Jason left for the office. Fletcher and I stood on the sidewalk outside the bakery. "He's under a lot of pressure," I said, defending him. "I know." Fletcher adjusted his glasses. "You both are." I looked at him. "I don't feel like we're under pressure together. I feel like I'm planning this alone, and you're the only one actually here." Fletcher was quiet for a long moment. "Isaac," the way he said my name made my chest tighten. "I need to tell you something," he continued. "And I need you to know I've tried not to. I've kept this professional." "But I can't," he stopped, exhaling. "I think about you all the time, and I know that's completely inappropriate. I know you're engaged. I know this is my job. But you asked for honesty, and I'm trying to give it to you." The street noise faded. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. "I think about you too," I whispered. Fletcher closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were pained. "What are we doing?" "I don't know." We stood there, 2 feet apart, not touching, everything unsaid hanging between us. "I should go," Fletcher finally said. I nodded. He walked away, and I watched until he disappeared around the corner, knowing everything had just changed and nothing could go back. I didn't tell Jason about the conversation with Fletcher. Not that night, not the next day. I told myself I needed time to think, to process. But really, I was afraid of hurting him, afraid of blowing up our life. Afraid that what I felt for Fletcher wasn't real, just some stress-induced confusion. For 3 days, I barely slept. I went to work, came home, had normal conversations with Jason about dinner and weekend plans, all while my internal world was falling apart. Jason noticed something was off. "You feeling okay?" he asked Thursday night. "Just tired." He kissed my forehead. "This wedding planning is exhausting. It'll be over soon, and then we can just be married. That'll be the easy part." His words hit me like cold water, because I wasn't sure I wanted the easy part. Not if easy meant more of what we already had. Parallel lives, good enough, comfortable, but distant. Friday afternoon, Fletcher texted, "We need to talk about final vendor confirmations. Can you meet?" I stared at the message. I could have said no, could have asked him to email everything. Instead, I wrote back, "When?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., same cafe where we met. I'll be there." I didn't tell Jason. He was golfing with colleagues anyway. Saturday morning, I arrived early, ordered coffee I didn't drink. Fletcher came in looking like he hadn't slept much either. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," we sat. For a minute, neither of us spoke. "I've been thinking about what I said," Fletcher began, "and I want to be clear, I'm not trying to sabotage anything. If you want me to refer you to another planner, I will. No hard feelings." "I don't want another planner." "Okay," he nodded carefully. "Then we need to set boundaries. Keep this professional. Can I ask you something first? Of course, I took a breath. If I weren't engaged, if you'd met me 6 months ago. Would you have asked me out? Fletcher's jaw tightened. Yes. Why? Because you're thoughtful, because you notice things. Because when you talk about your work at the hospital, you light up in a way that makes me want to hear every detail. Because you make me laugh without trying. Because, he stopped. Because I've planned 43 weddings and I've never once wished I was the one getting married until I met you. My throat constricted. Fletcher. But you are engaged, he said firmly. To someone you love, someone you built a life with, and I respect that, I do. What if I'm not sure anymore? The words came out before I could stop them. Fletcher looked at me with something like anguish. Isaac, you can't make that decision because of me. That's not fair to anyone, not Jason, not you, not even me. I'm not. Or I'm trying not to, I rubbed my face. I keep asking myself if I'd be questioning things if you weren't in the picture, and honestly, I think I would. I think I've been ignoring problems for a while because it was easier than facing them. What problems? I hadn't articulated this to anyone, barely to myself. Jason and I don't really talk anymore. Not about real things. We coordinate schedules. We're kind to each other. But when's the last time we stayed up late just talking? When's the last time he asked me how I actually felt about something, not just what I needed from the grocery store? Fletcher listened without interrupting. You asked me why I said yes when he proposed, I continued. The truth is I said yes because I was supposed to, because we'd been together long enough, because everyone expected it. Not because I woke up one day desperate to marry him specifically. Saying it out loud felt like lancing a wound. And meeting you made me realize what's missing, I finished quietly. Fletcher reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. What are you going to do? I think I need to talk to Jason. Yeah, he pulled his hand back. You do. We dealt with the vendor confirmations quickly after that. Professional, careful. When we parted, Fletcher didn't hug me, didn't even shake my hand. Take care of yourself, he said. I nodded, not trusting my voice. That evening I asked Jason if we could talk, really talk. We sat in our living room, he looked nervous. What's going on? I'd rehearsed this a dozen ways. All of them felt inadequate. I need to be honest with you about something, and it's going to hurt, and I'm sorry. His face went pale. Hey, I don't think I can marry you. The silence was crushing. What? His voice barely a whisper. I love you, I said and meant it. But I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. Maybe I haven't been for a while, and I've been ignoring it because it was terrifying to admit. Jason stared at me. Is there someone else? I could have lied, could have made this simpler. But he deserved the truth. I have feelings for someone, but that's not why I'm saying this. I'd be saying this either way because even without him, I don't think we're right anymore. Who? Jason? Who is it? Fletcher, he laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Our wedding planner. Jesus, Isaac, I'm sorry. Did you? He couldn't finish the question. No, nothing happened, just conversations. But they made me realize what's been missing between us. Jason stood up, pacing. So you're throwing away 4 years because our wedding planner is a better conversationalist than me? That's not fair. None of this is fair. His voice broke. I've been working my ass off. For us, for our future, and you're bailing because I'm busy. You're not just busy, you're absent. Even when you're here, you're not here. So help me be better. Don't just give up. I stood too, tears in my eyes. I don't think you want to be better. I think you like your life exactly how it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I can't be an afterthought anymore. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked up. Do you love him? I don't know him well enough to know, but you think you could? Yes, Jason nodded slowly. I should have seen this coming. You've been different for weeks. I thought it was wedding stress. I didn't think, he exhaled. I didn't think you'd leave. I'm so sorry. Are you? There was no malice in it, just exhaustion. Or are you relieved? I didn't answer because we both knew the truth. We talked for another hour, logistics. The apartment lease was in both our names. Most furniture was his from before we met. I said I'd move out, find a sublet. What do we tell people? Jason asked. The truth, that we realized we weren't right for each other. And Fletcher, I don't know. I need to figure out my own life first. Jason looked at me with something like pity. I hope he's worth it. This isn't about him. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was lying to myself. But sitting there, as painful as it was, I also felt something I hadn't in months, certainty. This was the right choice, even if it was the hard one. I slept on the couch that night. In the morning, I started looking for a place to stay. I moved into a short-term rental in Shorewood, a neighborhood north of downtown. It was small, sparsely furnished, not really home. But it was mine. I told my parents. They were disappointed but not surprised. My mom said, "I love Jason, but I wondered if you two were really happy." I told my closest friends. Most were supportive. A few sided with Jason, said I was making a mistake. I understood. From the outside, it probably looked impulsive. Reckless. I didn't contact Fletcher. He'd been right. I needed to make this decision independent of him. And even though we'd called off the wedding, I still needed space to figure out who I was outside of that relationship. 3 weeks passed. I focused on work, on settling into the new apartment, on letting myself grieve. Because even though I'd chosen this, it still hurt. 4 years doesn't disappear cleanly. Then on a Wednesday evening, my phone rang. Fletcher, my hand shook as I answered. "Hello, Isaac, hi," he sounded uncertain. I heard about the wedding. I wanted to reach out sooner, but I didn't know if that was appropriate. "How did you hear?" Jason emailed. He said we obviously wouldn't be needing my services anymore. Fletcher paused. He was pretty angry. "I'm sorry he dragged you into this." "Don't be, I am in it." Another pause. "Are you okay?" Hearing his voice made my chest ache. "I'm getting there, it's been hard. But I think it was right. For what it's worth, I think you were brave." "I don't feel brave. You ended something that wasn't working instead of settling. That takes courage." I sat on my second-hand couch, phone pressed to my ear. "I've been thinking about what you said about not making decisions because of you." "Yeah, you were right. I needed to know I could do this on my own, that I wasn't just running from one relationship into another. And now," my heart hammered, "now I'm wondering if you'd like to get coffee." "Not as a client, just as Isaac." Fletcher exhaled, and I could hear the smile in it. "I'd really like that." We met 2 days later, same cafe, different context. I arrived first again, but this time I wasn't nervous about vendor meetings. I was nervous about whether this thing between us, this possibility, was real. Fletcher walked in, and when he saw me, his whole face softened. "Hey," he said. "Hey." We ordered drinks, then sat by the window. For a moment, we just looked at each other. "This is weird, right?" I said. "Good weird, but weird." Fletcher laughed. "Very weird. I don't really know how to do this. The last time I went on a first date, I was 24. Well, I'm not your wedding planner anymore, so that's progress." We talked for 2 hours. Not about the wedding, not about Jason. I learned Fletcher grew up in Ann Arbor, studied hospitality management, fell into wedding planning almost by accident. He loved old movies and hiking and terrible puns. He had a sister in Seattle and a niece he adored. I told him about my work, about coordinating clinical trials, about the satisfaction of helping research move forward, about my typewriter collection, about how I'd wanted to be a journalist before choosing a more stable career. "Do you regret it?" Fletcher asked. "Sometimes, but I like what I do. It matters. You can always write on the side." "Maybe." When we finally left, it was dark outside. We stood on the sidewalk, and this time the space between us felt different, aloud. "Can I see you again?" Fletcher asked. "I'd like that," he smiled. "Good." We started slow. Coffee dates turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks along the lakefront. Fletcher showed me his favorite spots in Milwaukee. A used bookstore in the east side. A tiny Polish diner in the Menomonee Valley. A park overlooking the river where he went when he needed to think. I introduced him to my world. The museum where I volunteered on weekends, the coffee roaster where I bought beans, the late-night diner where hospital staff gathered after rough shifts. 6 weeks in, he kissed me. We were in his apartment watching an old Hitchcock film. He'd made popcorn and was explaining the cinematography with the kind of enthusiasm I found impossible not to love. I interrupted him mid-sentence. "Fletcher." "Yeah. Can I kiss you?" He blinked. Then smiled. "Please." It was gentle, careful, full of everything we'd both been holding back. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. "I'm glad I met you," I whispered. "Even though I was your wedding planner. Especially because you were my wedding planner. Otherwise, I might never have realized what I actually needed." Over the following months, we built something real, not rushed, built on the ghost of my previous relationship. Something entirely ours. Fletcher met my parents. They loved him immediately. My mom pulled me aside and said, "This is what happy looks like on you." I met his sister when she visited. She cornered me in the kitchen and said, "I haven't seen him this light in years. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." We had hard conversations, too. About my guilt over how things ended with Jason. About Fletcher's fear that he'd always be the other guy in people's minds. about whether we were moving too fast or not fast enough. But we talked. We talked, the way I'd needed to all along. 1 year after we met, Fletcher and I moved in together. A 2-bedroom place in River West with tall windows and original hardwood floors. I set up my typewriters in the 2nd bedroom. He hung vintage movie posters in the hallway. We hosted a housewarming party. Friends, coworkers, family. At one point, I stood in our kitchen, watching Fletcher explain the history of our neighborhood to my colleague, and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly knocked me over. This was what I'd been missing. Not perfection, not ease, but partnership, presence. Someone who saw me and stayed curious. Late that night, after everyone left, we cleaned up together. Fletcher washed dishes while I dried. "Good party," he said. "Great party." He glanced at me. You've been quiet." "Just happy," he smiled. Yeah. I set down the dish towel and turned to face him fully. "I know the way we started was messy. I know people probably judged it, maybe still do, but I don't regret any of it. Because it led me here, to you, to this life." Fletcher dried his hands, then pulled me close. "I don't regret it either. Not a single part." We stood there, wrapped around each other in our kitchen, and I thought about how strange and unpredictable life is. How sometimes the right thing looks like the wrong thing at first. How courage isn't always loud. Sometimes courage is admitting you're unhappy. Sometimes it's walking away from something good because you realize you need something true. Sometimes it's letting yourself fall for your wedding planner and trusting that the mess will be worth it. Fletcher kissed the top of my head. "What are you thinking about? How I hired you to plan my wedding and you ended up changing my entire life." He laughed softly. "Best career outcome I could have asked for. No regrets, you lost a client." "Isaac," he pulled back to look at me. "I gained you." That's not even a comparison. 2 years later, Fletcher proposed. Not with a big production. Just the two of us on a weekend trip to Madison, walking around Lake Mendota at sunset. He stopped on a quiet stretch of path, took my hand, and asked if I'd marry him. I said yes without hesitation. Because this time I wasn't saying yes because it was expected or because it was time. I was saying yes because I couldn't imagine my life without him. Because he made me braver and kinder and more myself. We kept the wedding small. Just close family and friends at a small venue overlooking the lake. We didn't hire a wedding planner. Fletcher insisted we could handle it ourselves, and we did. My mom cried during the ceremony. Fletcher's sister gave a toast about how love finds you when you're brave enough to be honest. My best friend mentioned that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. No one mentioned Jason. But late in the evening, I got a text from a number I almost didn't recognize. Saw the pictures online. "Congratulations, I mean that, it was Jason." I showed Fletcher. He read it, then looked at me. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think I am." "Do you want to respond?" I thought about it, then typed back, "Thank you, I hope you're well." Simple, kind, honest. Because that's what I'd learned through all of this. That kindness and honesty aren't opposing forces. That you can care about someone and still choose to leave. That endings, however painful, can lead to beginnings you never imagined. Fletcher and I danced as the sun set over the water, surrounded by people who loved us. His hand was warm in mine. His smile was real. And when he whispered, "I love you," I knew with absolute certainty that this was where I was meant to be. Not because it was easy, not because it was expected, but because it was true. And truth, I've learned, is always worth the difficult journey it takes to find it.